language learners, I have officially been learning French for a year now. What is it that I've been doing to learn French, and how is my French now? If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when I post a video on language learning strategies, tips, resources, and stories just like this one. As a language learning coach who helps my clients to plan out their language learning, map it out, stay consistent even in the worst of times, and conquer their language goals, the method that I took allowed me to stay flexible for the past year, optimistic and confident even when things got rough. I mean, the past year has been really busy, so the fact that I haven't just completely thrown away my French is an amazing testament to my methods and how my framework is really beneficial for independent language learners. The first thing I did to start with French is I started with Duolingo. Now, Duolingo isn't perfect, but it was a really accessible, low-key, low entrance, kind of emotionally, I get overwhelmed really easily, really accessible resource that gave me a general overarching idea of what French kind of feels like and how it works. It gave me some starting grammatical points, some starting vocabulary, started like training my ear just a little bit, not a whole lot, but just a little bit. It really just kind of got me used to hearing, seeing, living in French without having to do a whole lot. I mean, Duolingo is a game, and it makes it really easy to get sucked in, and I use that to my advantage for the first 6 months. I will admit this, I did definitely get sucked into the Duolingo trap for a minute, where I was, getting really focused on being perfect. Duolingo really rewards perfection, which isn't really what we want in our language learning, but I digress. It really rewards perfection and studying every single day, and I did get sucked into that a little bit, which meant that I was focusing on things that weren't really important to me as opposed to things that were important to me. But fortunately, I got myself out and I learned my lesson again. Anyways, Duolingo did get me started, like I said, as a general understanding of what French feels like and how it relates to Spanish, because I have a lot more experience with Spanish, and really just kind of gave me a little bit of a base. Just a very light base. While Duolingo isn't like my primary support anymore, I still do go back to it from time to time, especially with Duolingo stories. They're a really easy way to get some easy, short listening comprehension in if I'm just having an off day and I want to do something simple that doesn't take a whole lot of effort. It's not the most complicated, it's pretty simple, but it's better than nothing. And so for me, it's a really helpful tool some days when I want to do something but I can't do a lot. So for the first 6 months, I was pretty much just on Duolingo, and then I had my first conversation. I have a video of that if you want to watch it. It was bad. I knew that my speaking was going to be bad with Duolingo because Duolingo is not effective speaking practice. It was bad. Anyways, around the time of that video, so about 6 months after Duolingo and getting through about half of the French tree, I switched to focusing primarily on Quizzic. Quizzic is really helpful for a more precise, intentional approach to grammar, and it really digs in deep to grammar a lot better than Duolingo does. So even though Quizzic isn't as easy and lighthearted, it still is kind of gamified, so it is still kind of fun, but it's also more legit, honestly. It gives you a much more legitimate, concrete understanding of grammar. And then I also used Quizzic for intensive listening. So Quizzic has listening exercises where you can listen to a short audio clip and then you transcribe as you go. So it can really fine-tune your ear to the language and start building up your listening comprehension. This really helped me get a very strong grasp on A1 French grammar, just like the basic stuff and basic comprehension. It gave me a lot of confidence being able to see how I could improve in a fairly short amount of time. And that legitimate progress and feeling like I'm legitimately learning is a lot more sustainable, a lot more genuinely motivating than depending on Duolingo's hook that Duolingo gets on you. So while Quizzic does get really deep sometimes, which is a good thing, so you have a genuine understanding of the grammar, I still did keep it a little bit less intense for me by only committing to 15 minutes a day, 6 days a week. And that's really helpful for me to not get overwhelmed. By only committing to 15 minutes a day, it helped me keep my expectations low, and then when I passed the 15 minutes and I still felt, you know, motivated and open to more information, it made me feel better about myself, as opposed to if I went with 30 minutes, that's just really overwhelming to me. And then we had a major life change. I started working on coaching. I started working with coaching clients and started building confident language learning, which took a lot more of my time, gave me a lot more stress. It just made me a lot busier. So while it was difficult to keep consistent with Quizig and make like real strong, intense progress, I was still able to do a little something here and there, 15 minutes a day. So sometimes I would do some Fluent Forever. Sometimes I would do some Quizig. Sometimes I would do some Linguist. Sometimes I would do some Duolingo. Sometimes I would get some listening practice in on YouTube. A bunch of little things that were pretty sporadic and not the most intentional per se, but it was productive in that it kept me involved with the language and kept me touching the language a little bit, even when I was like stressed out and exhausted from the rest of my life. So even though I wasn't making those strong pushes forward, that was okay. I was perfectly happy pulling it back a little bit while I had to take care of some other parts of my life, you know, like mental health. I allowed myself the space to take care of my mental health and my clients and myself before trying to throw myself into language learning. If you want to see consistency and progress in your language learning, make sure you hit the like button. And then for about a month and a half, I took a full out break. I had to focus really hard on my clients and building confident language learning and dealing with the stress of that. And so I really didn't have the space in my life to include anything else. I had to commit all of my time, focus, energy into course creation. So instead, what I did was I prioritized my mental health. I made sure that my mental health was in a positive place. So even though I was stressed out and I was busy and I was overwhelmed, I was still in a positive mental space, and I still gave myself space to love French and love language learning, even though I didn't have the time to approach it at that point. I allowed myself to kind of let go of any expectations that I had for myself and reminded myself that French will always be there when I'm ready for it. It's not gonna go anywhere, and me being busy and being stressed out and being tired is not a reflection of who I am. This is just life. Life happens, you don't always have to be studying all the time. The important thing was that my mental health was in a good place and that I allowed French to keep being a positive thing for me, even if I couldn't do it at the moment. It was still something that I could enjoy and come back to when I was ready for it. So like I said, that took about a month and a half. Today, my life is a lot more simple, fortunately. There's no more school in session. My course creation is over. I can focus on things like working with my clients and doing things that make me happy, like language learning. I can focus a lot more on languages like I want to. And in the short term, what I want to do is I really want to conquer A2 in French and also in Spanish. And the thing about language learning is just because you have an advanced comprehension or advanced level of fluency in a language doesn't mean you necessarily conquered all the beginner stuff. So one of the things that I'm suffering from in my Spanish is some A2 grammatical concepts, which I know enough to get by, but I always have to think more than I want to, and I don't have a firm grasp on these concepts. Considering I want to be working on A2 French as well, this is a really good opportunity to kind of like marry the two, because Spanish and French are so related and so like similar that it's a really good opportunity to bring them both up in a way that like they can help each other out, you know? And I know what you're thinking. Okay, Jamie, we don't care about your grammar. We want to hear you speak. I mean, you don't actually, because if you notice, everything that I've done in the past year has had no speaking. So my speaking is still pretty terrible because I haven't worked on it for the past year. I focused on grammar, I focused on listening comprehension, a little bit of pronunciation with Fluent Forever, but generally grammar and listening comprehension, which means I can understand a lot more than I can say. I have barely worked on speaking at all. So my spoken French is still terrible, honestly. I mean, I could probably say some basic stuff like Je m'appelle Jamie et j'habite les États-Unis. And my pronunciation is probably terrible. That's that's what happens when, you're focused on what exactly you want and speaking isn't necessarily the priority. And that's opposed to something like my Spanish, where I have a lot more experience. Y puedo hablar de muchas cosas y estoy acostumbrada a pensar en español y estoy acostumbrada a pensar en el español, y después de vivir en España por 1 año, 8 meses, algo así, mi español es mejor, mi español es bueno y puedo comunicarme y no hay problema. It's not the case with French yet, because I have not had 8 months to a year of living in a French-speaking country. It really just depends. So fortunately, even though I spent a whole year in French and I still can't speak anything, I am still very confident in my approach, and I still feel very confident in my abilities, even if I can't necessarily show and tell my French yet. If you want to feel confident in your language learning, even if you can't really show it off or life gets busy, make sure to click the link in my bio to access my free training, where I go step by step, lesson by lesson, phase by phase through the program that my coaching clients go through, that brings them from a frustrated language learner and feeling bad about themselves and not making progress to somebody who is confident and making real movement towards their goals in a way that makes them happy. And if you want to know the steps that I took to keep consistent and, be able to adjust when life got busy or adjust when my skills changed, make sure you watch this video where I go really in depth with that. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.